Hi, I'm Stewart Rogers, co-founder of Badass Empire with Victoria Loskatova, and this is the latest episode of Badass School. Now, we're going to take a slight turn this time around. We're going to talk about sales. Now, you may not know this, but back in the day, I was a salesperson. Used to sell all sorts of things from large printing solutions to huge copiers and all sorts of other things. But when I was doing that, I got involved with Xerox. Now, Xerox is one of the biggest printer and copier companies in the world, and they actually asked me to redesign some of their sales training. So I ended up training over 3,000 salespeople how to sell. Now, when I look at the way that people sell to each other, I see lots of big mistakes, and we're going to go through some of those mistakes today so that you don't have to make them. Now, why is it important to know how to sell? Well, right now, when we have the pandemic currently, we are moving to online business. We're moving to shifting and changing our businesses. We're needing to find new partners. Some of us have got startups and we're needing to find funding. Some of us have business-to-business companies, B2B companies, and you still need to sell your products to other businesses. There are so many different ways that you need to use good sales tactics and techniques right now. And a lot of the things that people do seem like the right thing to do, but actually are not. Now, in addition to training over 3,000 salespeople, I did also work with a company as an analyst, and we studied over 10,000 sales interactions to find out if there were any common elements in the sales process so that we could split the sales process down and make it something that's easier for people to deal with. So I'm going to tell you what that looks like today, and hopefully it will help you in all of your negotiations, in all of your partnerships, in selling your products and services and apps and everything else that you need to succeed with right now. So let's talk about the first mistake. The first mistake is something I'm doing right now, which is talking all the time. But this is a video, and I'm trying to teach you something, so it's no surprise that I'm doing that. But in a sales environment, the biggest mistake is for us to just constantly talk to people and constantly tell them what we've got. It's great to be proud of what you have and what you've got on offer and of yourself, of course, but you mustn't just go into a massive tirade and tell everybody about it and just pitch to people all the time. You know, think about it this way. You've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. You should be using them in that proportion. So you should be listening twice as much as you're talking, at the very least. So that's the first mistake. And this is the most crucial part of the sales cycle, because when we broke down those 10,000 sales cycles, what we realized is that every single one of them had 3 elements to it. Probe, prove, and close. Probe is where you're asking questions. And the probe phase of a sales cycle, regardless of how long the sales cycle is, regardless of the value of the product you're trying to sell or the value of the partnership you're trying to close, the probe part of the sales cycle typically runs for around about 60% of the entire sales cycle. So for 60% of the time, you are supposed to be asking questions, probing. You're supposed to be asking open questions, and this is another mistake that people make when they are in sales. They ask questions of a yes-no nature. Always ask questions that are open, so use who, what, when, why, how. You know, those are the kinds of questions that get people to open up and tell you what is happening in their business, tell you what problem they have. Tell you the high-level problem they have, and then you can drill down into that to get to the low-level things that they need. And what you should be doing in this probe phase is asking all these open questions so that they can't just shut it down with a yes or a no. And you should be making lots of notes. You should be asking them what their problem is, listening to their description, and then ask them another question to go deeper and another question to go deeper until you get to what it is they need to solve this problem. And you should be writing down the things that they need so that you have a list. Super important. We'll come back to that list later. The next phase of the sales cycle is prove. Prove lasts for about 30% of the sales cycle. So 60% of it is probe, 30% of it is prove. What are you supposed to be doing in the prove phase? Well, Very simply, as the name would suggest, you're supposed to be proving to them that you have the solution to their problem and that you're the right person for the job. You're the right company. You're the right organization. This is what you're supposed to be doing. So another mistake that salespeople make here is not having enough people power prepared. What do I mean by people power? I mean case studies. I mean a really good website that explains the value of what you have to offer. I mean being able to show people demonstrations so that they can actually see it working. Being able to do all of those things to show that you can tick off all of the things you listed out that they need. And be honest with them, because that's another mistake. Salespeople love to just embellish the truth somewhat. Maybe I've seen some that actually seemingly are going to sell you the moon on a stick. Don't do that. The customer's going to find out after the purchase that it won't do what you said it was going to do, and they're going to ask you for their money back, and then they're going to tell 500 people that you're terrible people to deal with. Be honest. If you can't tick off all the items on this list, be honest with the customer and say, look, we can do all of these, but we can't do this one right now. How important is that to you? If they have to go to a competitor because the competitor has everything and you don't, take that as a sign that you should be developing that missing thing and move on to the next prospect. Don't try to force them into buying it, because they'll get buyer's remorse most of the time. You'll have to give them their money back. You'll have wasted your time, which means it's costing you to do that sale. Every time you do a sale, it costs you money in your time. So if you get down that list, you realize there's things you can't do. Unless the customer is happy to just forget about that one thing that it can't do because they like everything else, move on. Prove that you are the people with not just the solution to all their problems, but you're going to add value to them. Because value is the most incredibly important thing. The other mistake I see salespeople doing is discounting. If you've set a fair price for your product, your service, whatever it is, if you've set a fair price so that you make a fair profit, not an outlandish profit, a fair profit, so that you can continue to be in business, and somebody says, I need a discount on this, or it's too expensive, or I need the price to be lower, it's probably because you haven't done a good enough job of explaining the value of what you have to offer. It's not their fault, it's your fault for not doing a good enough job in explaining the value. So make sure that you have great value propositions. Make sure you're showing people the value of what you have to offer at all times, because if they understand the value and they see that it's going to solve their problems, or it's going to save them money, or it's going to make them money, they won't ask you for a discount, they won't ask you for a lower price, as long as you're being fair with your pricing. So make sure you're always explaining the value. And if somebody asks you for a discount, explain the value. If they're still saying, no, it's still too much for our budget, say, okay, look, given all the value that we are going to provide you with, we think this is a fair price, but if you need it to be lower to get into your budget, I can take out this feature and this feature, which are the two that were least important to you. If I take out these features, then I can make it fit within your budget. Never discount, always remove value. Super important distinction. So think about those things. Then, of course, you get to the last part of the sales process, which is close. And close is just 10% of the sales process. This is where you're basically saying to them, and this is effectively a trial close that you can actually do right in the probing or proving phase. At the end of the probing phase, at the beginning of the proving phase, you can say, look, we've listed out A, B, C, and D, and here's the phrase you want to use. If I can show you that I can do A, B, C, and D at a fair price, is there any reason why you wouldn't go ahead with us? Now, if they say, no reason, you've already done a trial close. They're already buying into the fact that they're going to get something from you if you can prove that you can do all of this. If they say, I'm not sure, or if they say, actually I forgot, we also need E as well, then you can talk about E, put it on the list, and then you can do the trial close again and say, okay, if we can do A, B, C, D, and E, is there any reason why you wouldn't go ahead with us as long as it's at a fair price? If they say, yeah, I'll go ahead with you if you can prove it to me at that phase, The last bit of closing is super easy because you can just remind them of that conversation and say, okay, we've shown you all of this, we've proven that we can do it, you've seen some customer case studies, you can see that we do this on a regular basis. How about we go ahead and get that paperwork signed up? How about we get the contract signed up? Whatever it is you need to do, how about I invoice you? Let's get you started. There's not much to do in the close phase if you've done the probe and the prove phase properly and effectively. So let's just recap. Always ask open questions. Don't give people an opportunity to close the conversation down with just a yes or a no. Use 2 ears, 1 mouth in that proportion. Listen twice as much as you speak. Write down the things that you discover the customer needs so that you can do a trial close at the end of the probe phase and beginning of the proof phase before you start investing lots of time into it. Be honest every single time in sales. Be honest. Don't go trying to sell the moon on a stick to people. They will find out. They will have buyer's remorse. You'll have wasted a lot of your time and effort and you'll have to give them the money back. In the proof phase, make sure you have prepared case studies and lots of great value propositions, and explain that value early on and constantly so that people don't ask you for a discount. And if you have to reduce your price, take value out of the deal, don't just reduce your price. And if you've done everything correctly up to that point, then you should be able to just say, how about we go ahead? So there's the standard sales cycles broken down for you. There's some of the mistakes that people make, and I've given you alternate ways to think about those. Now go and do some amazing sales, build some new partnerships, get some funding, and go and create some awesome things. And if you want to continue your education in business and lifestyle and marketing, don't forget you've got Badass Summit, which is 28 of the world's best speakers telling you just how they got to be so awesome, not just telling you that they are awesome. They actually give you lots of amazing takeaways. Go to badasssummit.com. Thank you for being our patron, by the way. If you're one of our patrons on Patreon, at certain tier levels you also get a discount voucher for the all-access pass for Badass Summit, so that you can re-watch those 28 speeches as many times as you like, and there's over $1,000 worth of value in the speaker bonuses available when you buy that all-access pass. So I'll see you on another episode of Badass School. Thanks so much, and always be closing.